2023世界合唱节的艺术总监唐绍伟教授以及合唱节组委会，欢迎大家来到合唱节的第2阶段——线上合唱节。
Hello everyone, my name is Brian and I will be your host today. On behalf of Artistic Director Professor Tong and the organizing committee of the 2023 World Choir Festival, I'd like to welcome you to the online events of the festival.
2023世界合唱节为世界青少年合唱艺术家协会成立25周年的大型线上庆典活动之一。本次合唱比赛的评审团由30位来自30个国家及地区的合唱专家组成。参赛的中国大陆合唱团来自3个直辖市、1个自治区、14个省份，一共26个城市。另外，来自中国大陆以外参与演出和比赛的合唱团有来自亚洲、欧洲、非洲、北美洲、南美洲等5大洲，一共10个国家及地区，超过100支合唱团参与。
The festival is part of the celebration of WYCCAA's 25th anniversary, while the panel jury consists of 30 choral experts from 30 countries and regions. There are over 100 choirs from over 10 countries and regions across Asia, Europe, Africa, North and South America participating in the festival.
今天的活动非常丰富，我们将给大家推送一场大师课、4场国际嘉宾合唱团音乐会、1场优秀参赛合唱团展演音乐会，以及合唱节的高潮所在——闭幕决赛。
We're about to enjoy a wide range of programs today, including a Masterclass, 4 concerts by 4 international guest choirs, a showcase concert of outstanding competing choirs, and finally the grand finale of the festival.
在正式开始之前，让我们一起回顾一下世界青少年合唱艺术家协会这25年来所举办过的国际合唱节的精彩片段。
Before we start, let's look back on the major events organized by WYCCAA in the past 25 years.
咁我哋咧係有39個國家參加啦，咁同埋咧有3000嘅人咧係直接咧係參與我哋嘅比賽啊、大師班啊、工作坊啊、互動工作坊啊，同埋音樂會嘅。咁我哋今年咧係第一次咧舉行我哋嘅世界合唱指揮大賽，咁我哋咧好開心咧係有差唔多100人參加，其中裏邊咧選取咗12個出嚟，咁係亦都分別來自係10個國家，咁最後咧我哋都選出咗咧係3個咧好優秀嘅指揮。
I think it's a great festival, and I like that the combination of having a choir competition, making friends, making good music.
Just a wonderful community and a beautiful chance to share the joy of singing.
何手術，我見佢仲多過見我老豆。
精彩的画面和活动，是否也很想来参与一下呢？希望我们很快就能在线下的活动中相遇。
We hope that you enjoyed the video and that we can meet in person in live events very soon.
好，那么我们正式开始今天的活动了。第一场节目是由来自澳大利亚的世界著名作曲家 Stephen Leek 先生所带来的《我的合唱作品与心路历程大师课》。Stephen Leek 先生是一名作曲家、指挥家、教育家，他是澳洲之声联合创始人及指挥，罗伯特·埃德勒国际合唱奖和多项国家奖的获奖者。
So let's get started. The first program of today is a masterclass presented by Mr. Stephen Leek from Australia. He'll be speaking about his own choral works and experience in the field. Mr. Leek is a freelance composer, conductor, educator and publisher. He is co-founder and conductor of the Australian Voices and a recipient of the Robert Edler International Choral Prize and many national awards. Please welcome Mr. Stephen Leek.
欢迎。
Hello, my name is Stephen Leek and I'm an Australian composer and conductor, and I've been composing music and conducting now for over 40 years. I've worked most of my life as a freelance artist and musician. In part one of this presentation, I will discuss some of the aspects of my compositions when I write for young children. When I was young, I sang in choirs and learnt to play lots of instruments. The cello was my main instrument, and after tertiary studies in cello performance and composition, I became a professional cellist, composer, and conductor. I've worked in education and in the community for a lot of my years, through residencies, commissions, and in sessional appointments. But through it all, choral music has been central to my compositional work. I founded an improvisational choral group called Voice Art in the late 1980s, where we explored the full range and possibilities of the human voice, and then co-founded and conducted the well-known and acclaimed the Australian Voices in the early 1990s. My work with this ensemble particularly has allowed me to explore and develop my compositional voice, and at the same time helped create a modern compositional language for Australian choral music. During the middle 1980s, I worked very closely with Lynn Williams in establishing the Sydney Children's Choir and then Gondwana Voices, and then around the same time with Graham Morton at St Peter's Lutheran College in Brisbane. These alliances allowed me to develop much needed repertoire for young voices at different levels, which would develop skills in young singers into an understanding of a new Australian choral world as adult singers. Along the way too, I have worked with hundreds of groups around the country, including with First Nations people who encouraged and gave permission for me to develop bridges between the traditional music making of Australia and our contemporary cultures through song. Today, I want to look at a few pieces of different technical standards that I've written for children and young voices over the decades. All the scores that you will see today are available from my website, stephenleek.com. When I started seriously to think about writing choral music, I wondered why we rarely sang about the stories and places in our own country. Faced with writing choir for young voices, I found and still find the greatest challenge to be finding or creating suitable texts and subjects that are age appropriate, available to use, and I wanted to find texts that were reflective of being an Australian in the country in which I live. Back in the 80s and 90s, I composed a lot of music for young children, because writing for children is a wonderful way to learn about composing for the voice in general. Working regularly with ensembles of young children allowed me to develop my skills in writing for singers between the ages of 5 and 12 at different levels of skill, and where the compositions need to be tailored, highly tailored to each specific group. In each piece, I attempted to write pieces that children would find fun to sing, but also included at least one musical element that would challenge and develop the singers in some way into different musical ideas or techniques and telling Australian stories. I started looking for words. One thing I noticed when looking for words was that our language and our words sounded different to other cultures. The Australian accents are different to those of England and America, and certainly the sound of the vowels and consonants are different to languages most often used in choral settings such as Latin, German, and French. So why had we not developed this unique feature in our choral music in the past, when it had been explored widely in previous decades in our literature and in our dance, in our theatre, and even in our orchestral writing and in opera, but not in choral music? So the language and the words is where I started. I started by listening intensely to the sounds of the words, the sounds of place names around me, listening to the sounds of our unique landscapes, listening to our unique bird songs, the songs of the rainforest, the sounds of the dry winds in the outback, and listening to the busy sounds of our cities. I also looked to the stories and events of our recent and past histories. As a freelance artist, I have been very fortunate to have had the opportunity to travel to many of the places around Australia and to work in projects with people that live there and experience these unique aspects of Australian life every day. I generally like to write for people that I know, and this adds another dimension to the significance of the work and for their ownership within our community. I found the wonderful book of Australian nursery rhymes for children written by the Australian wordsmith Kel Richards. Here, it's back to front here, I can see, but it's called Father Koala's Nursery Rhymes. Here I found a whole book where he took traditional English nursery rhyme patterns and put them into an Australian context. At great expense at the time, I bought the rights to the whole book from Kel and his publisher and have since been working my way through the entire collection. This subject material is fun, light-hearted, yet age-appropriate and familiar. It also has great illustrations by Glenn Singleton throughout the book. You'll notice that all the pieces I write for children of different ages have limited pitch ranges suited to the voices they are aimed at. For the youngest singers, I try to keep to perfect intervals or stepwise motion. I try to make the melodic lines memorable, but often build little surprises into them and things that will challenge them. The piano accompaniments I also try to keep quite simple and most often doubling and supporting the melodic line. For the youngest singers, the pieces are either in unison or in simple two-part canon. In all my compositions, I create little motifs that are developed throughout the work. In Black Swan Song, which is the next piece I'm going to play, I found an opportunity to develop vowel sounds and to integrate slow-moving passages with long sustained pitches on open vowels in descending and ascending fashion, going up and down, not too much skipping or jumping around. You'll note the stepwise motion in the long notes and then the movement by perfect intervals, fourths and fifths. Note also that the repeated notes that first appear in bar 13 prepare the singers to sing up and over into the highest over the highest notes into their head voices. Singing of the ocean is the text. Another skill that can be developed here is controlling the breath to sing 2-bar phrases and then 4-bar legato phrases. There is also an unusual phrasing pattern in the middle section, sustained section. Also note that the piano left hand is mostly ascending sequence of arpeggios, while the right hand supports the vocal line all the way through the piece. And then we go all the way back to the beginning. Okay, so you might say, what is so Australian about all of this? Well, even though the structure is built on English nursery rhymes, the words set in this setting are truly sets in a truly an Australian landscape. A billabong tree is one that grows near the billabong, which is a small pond-like body of water in the bush where animals come to drink. The next work, Dreams of Never Never, steps up the challenge level with alternating 4/4 and 7/8 time signatures. It looks tricky on paper, but in reality, if the rhythm is taught correctly, the children have no problem with it. It is generally the conductor who may have some issues, and I don't think that mixed meters are beyond the youngest singers. Again, I like finding the natural rhythms of the text and building them into the music through mixed time signatures that follow these rhythms. The never never mentioned in the title is in the Australian vernacular, which is places outside of the big cities and towns. The whole piece takes place in a child's dream. So there is a real storytelling sense within the piece. Dreams of Never Never. If I can get there. There we go. Great. So those singers were about average age between 9 and 12. The next piece, Beyond the Black Stump, is another name in Australia we give to places that are in the outback, outside of the major centres where it's mostly a bit wild, where people ride horses, drive bashed up trucks. It is quite dry and dusty, and they are desolate places often. And there are lots of flies. I wanted to write a fun piece in a familiar style and set the crazy words with energy and drive, which is also a lot of fun. Out there in the black stump, there are so many flies, they get into your mouth and they get into your eyes. You'll notice that the accompaniments are quite repetitive and the choral structures are quite diatonic. If I can get there again. Here we go. Okay. So the last of these pieces I want to share with you from this set of Kel Richards nursery rhymes is one of the many collaborations I've had with the students of Eltham East Primary School Choir and their conductor and teacher, the very talented Anne Williams. The piece is targeted at singers who are perhaps a little older, perhaps upper primary aged, up near the 12-year-olds range. We worked together perhaps twice a year over 20 years. With the students, I would go on journeys to explore their local area and discover their local stories. The set of pieces we created on this occasion is called Winter Journey, where we all set off for a week to an area just south of Melbourne to write about the stories and songs of the area. The students wrote the texts of their experiences and I wrote the music. They then sang and recorded them. There are 5 pieces in this set. Split Point is a song about a very well-known lighthouse that guides the ships into Port Phillip Bay. In the music, I started with a very simple pulsating idea of the circling light in a figure in the piano and placed a similarly pulsating melodic line over the top that appears first in unison and then later on in canon. The lyrical passages are broken up firstly by an aleatoric graphic section where the sounds are like seagulls circling around the light, and in the lower part includes some more unusual intervals for the choir to sing, all of which are supported by the piano. The second section is in the Lydian mode and captures the excitement of young children chasing each other around the base of a lighthouse. This piece introduces the singers to elements of aleatoric singing at letter B, where they have freedom to put the materials provided wherever they like, along with some more unfamiliar notations, as well as the joy of singing in a simple Lydian mode. The last section of the piece requires the 2 parts to sing in a simple canon, ending with a short coda. I've tried to capture the pulsating of the lighthouse in the piano writing and in the repetitive movement of the melodic line. There are lots of examples of word painting in this piece, where the music tries to capture the image or energy of the text, pulsating light, seagulls squawking, running children, etc. In much of my work, particularly for young singers, I enjoy utilizing simple compositional devices such as unison, canons, drones, repetition, harmonies built on fifths and strong rhythms, and word painting that is built into the motifs that I create. I'm not a fan of complex or chromatic harmonic movement in any of my compositions. So to finish this section, this is Split Point sung by the Eltham East Primary School Choir.
Light
In this second part of my presentation, I'd like to talk about some of the choral music I've composed for teenage and young adult singers. Once on a Mountain is perhaps acknowledged as the first major a cappella choral piece in Australia, which I wrote in 1988. This piece was the result of a 3-month residency at St Peter's Lutheran College in Brisbane. I had, in the years prior to this residency, worked for 3 years as composer music with the Tasmanian Dance Company, where we travelled extensively throughout Tasmania, the place where I now live, in the very south of Australia. We worked with schools and communities. We worked with children and young adults and adults. For me, this was a great and rapid learning curve. In the course of our regular workshopping and performing, the company was taken to some breathtaking natural and handmade landscapes in the west of the state, such as the giant ancient forests of the Tarkines and the barren mountains around the mining towns of Queenstown, and places where the traditional owners had left their art on the rocks and in caves. It was in one such place that inspired this setting of 7 short a cappella pieces under the title of Once on a Mountain, several years later. I found a text by Australian poet Anne Fairbairn that captured the essence of one of the movements. Look, there are dark hands in the black rock, man's hands, woman's hands, a child's hand hiding in a rock cave. These words inspired me, both by the images they created, but also with the sounds and rhythms of the words, with striking consonants that fell into natural flow of the music. This was a wonderful text that captured much of the way I felt in these places in Western Tasmania. And the challenge for me was to allow the text to maintain that power while I set them to music. This is always a challenge for composers, to allow the true meaning of the text and the words to maintain their integrity while they are being set to music. So here, like every time I compose choral music, I started with the words and their stated and implied meanings, as well as their natural rhythms, colours, and unique sounds. I repeated the words out loud to myself over and over to get a sense of the construction of the sounds and the depth of their meaning. I decided the pitch material did not need to be complex, so I built a simple melodic repetition over a minor third in the upper voices, while the accompaniment was created in the lower voices out of the percussive elements of the text. The text sings of white men seeing these ancient artworks scratched into the rock and realizing that they were not the first people to live here or come here. This piece was written for an advanced non-auditioned high school choir, and at the time it was a huge learning curve for the singers and indeed Australian choral music in terms of the challenges it threw up, mixed meters, repetitive phrases, different ways of singing, and non-traditional use of harmony and texture and vocal techniques. Australian choirs to this point were mostly unfamiliar with most of these techniques. This piece actually became a study piece in Australian music textbooks, so several generations of young singers grew up with these works. Look, there are dark hands. While working at St Peter's College and the Choral over the next decade, I composed numerous pieces for teenage singers, and having the opportunity to hear them in rehearsal and in performance offered a great opportunity to develop my ideas and my choral writing skills. Which brings me to the sensitive subject of working with our First Nations people and the way that I have collaborated in different ways over the years. I have worked with several different groups of Aboriginal people over the course of my career and never had an issue with us trying to build bridges between our cultures through singing and song. One such strong example is when I was working back in Tasmania in 1991 in a project with the dance company that involved the local Indigenous community. In this situation, I was not only invited to sing one of their traditional songs in performance, but asked by the Palawa elders to compose a song for them to sing in their language for the performance. As a result, Ria Wana was created, and permission was given by the elders for it to be sung by others, hence creating a strong bridge between our cultures. Ria Wana is the word for circles and cycles. In this workshop-style piece, the elements are given in free notation and the performers are given permission to interpret the score as they will. There are boxes with short fragments, which could be pitched or just rhythms or sounds, which could be repeated ad libitum and layered on top of each other. The result is that there have been hundreds of performances of this work across the world, and all are different. Each performance empowers the singers to enter into the compositional phase of the work's creation. It is a piece which allows shared culture and the individuality of each group of performers to shine. This is a version sung by young children, but it is suitable for all ages to interpret. Ria Wana. So there are many other performance examples of this work on YouTube. Through the many collaborations I've experienced with Indigenous people, artists and musicians, I feel they have had enormous influence on my work. And without being patronising or appropriating, I feel this has enabled me to look at the land in which I live, the landscapes, the place names, the sounds, the animals and the stories of our ancient and modern country, through my experiences and in my own new light. Great Southern Spirits is a major set of 4 a cappella movements composed in 1991. Condalilla is the 3rd movement of the set and is the name of a small area of lush rainforest near where I once lived on the Sunshine Coast, just north of Brisbane. Deep inside the rainforest are the Condalilla Falls, where the water falls from a great height down into the pools below. This once again is an aleatoric work, but is highly structured in the materials that are sung and the order in which they are sung, but give the upper voices the freedom to play off each other and create the atmospheric bed for the work. The upper voices capture the freshness of the rainforest, the call of the birds, the crackle of the bush, and the energy and the grandeur of the falls. The Indigenous meaning of Condalilla is the place of the falling water. The simple motifs once again are repeated ad lib by the upper voices, and the singers are often placed around the audience in performance to create a special sense and to get the effect of the calling of the birds in the forest. Other techniques that you will observe here are the use of drones, clusters of different kinds. Once again, the use of strong consonant sounds used to punctuate the lines and silence. This work has been performed by a very good upper primary school choir, but here it is in the original SATB version, Condalilla. So, not all my pieces have direct connections to the First Nations world, but I like to think that we share in the beauty of the Australian landscape and the energy and all the variety and magnificence that is encapsulated in that. Here is a simple homophonic chorale setting to a text by Australian writer Dorothy McKellar that I think captures the beauty of Australia's natural world. I don't know what key it's in, and to me, that doesn't matter. I don't think about that when I'm writing. It is more about the beauty of the choral harmonies matched with the lyricism of the words. I generally don't think about the harmonic structure as I'm writing, but enjoy the way one note or chord or colour leads to another. And for me, I guess this is what makes good choral writing. The way one note voice leads to the next in a natural and seamless manner. High places. We'll get there. Here we go. To finish this brief musical journey, I'd like to share a piece which is not often performed because it explores perhaps some of the extremes of the choral voice. It sounds difficult, though it is not that difficult to sing if you understand the possibilities of the voice. Vertical Blue incorporates harmonic overtone singing, a very ancient style of singing I brought to Australian choral music in the 1980s, and has since become a staple of the composer's toolkit in this country and elsewhere around the world. There are also a range of aleatoric symbols and techniques employed, which are used in a controlled and free manner. This structure very much follows the drama of the text, and the words are used in a variety of different ways, using word painting techniques. You will hear also the control of the diphthongs to create certain unusual colours within the setting. Even when using these unusual techniques, as a composer, I want to make my music accessible. So I use as many traditional notations as possible. I try not to invent new symbols, but try and stick to the traditional notations as much as I can. The texts are extracted from an iconic work by Kenneth Slessor titled 5 Bells. This is a lengthy poem that tells of the abstracted tale of a friend who falls off a ferry into the Sydney harbour at night and, drowning, sees his world turned upside down, with images and feelings of his life flashing before him. This text has been set by many composers and also used as a starting point for numerous other artworks, perhaps the most famous of which is by the inspired late John Olsen's 5 Bells, which graces the northern foyer of the famous Sydney Opera House. A stunning and very large-scale work with a base of deep purples and splintered with bright, luminous colours. My piece was originally written for choir and orchestra, but here, my choir, the Australian Voices, a choir of highly skilled young adults, performs the a cappella version. Vertical Blue.
flood that does not flow, between the double and the single bell of a ship's hour, between a round of bells from the warship riding there below. I have lived many lives, and this one life joy, long dead, who lives between 5 bells.
So my journey in choral music, I hope, is not over, and there's still much to do. Thank you for coming on this journey with me today. Please visit my website, stephenleek.com, if you'd like to know much more about the music I've written over the last couple of decades. Thank you. Happy singing. Bye.